Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm ffinlo Costain. Brazilian meat exporter and processor Minerva Foods is in the market for a potential $1 billion 10-year senior unsecured bond issuance to finance the acquisition of 16 plants from competitor Marfrig. The Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute reports that this acquisition will create a beef giant in Brazil, which they say creates clear sustainability and valuation concerns, given ongoing regulatory focus on deforestation. Stéphanie Mielnik is the research director for the Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute. I asked her to explain what the institute is and why it's interested in the bond market.
So the Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute is a non-profit organization with the goal of empowering fixed income markets in their climate transition. And so we provide investors with insights and tools to help them aligning their fixed income portfolios with ambitious climate and nature goals.
Now, not all of our audience will be entirely familiar with the term, so I wonder if you could just explain what we mean by fixed income and also what we mean by a bond.
So fixed income is a broad name for an asset class which, as its name indicates, is paying a regular and predictable payments to investors. Bonds account for a huge part of the fixed income market, and they are a security that is typically used by governments or corporations to raise money. They're pretty similar to a loan, and so the investors, they will lend money to a borrower, that is, as I mentioned, a government or corporation, in exchange of an interest rate over a fixed time period.
When you're considering ecological investment risks, what are the key environmental issues?
Historically, our NGO has been focusing on climate risk and more specifically on how to integrate such risks in securities pricing. Now we have also extended our focus to nature loss as there are clear links with climate risk. And it is risk that investors, we believe, are underestimating at the moment in their portfolios.
And what are the key risk factors linked to the environment? For example, are they legislative or reputational?
Well, the list is quite long, hence why we are urging investors to integrate such risk in their portfolio. It could take me an hour to go through the whole list, but I think I will take three as an example. So reputational risk is, of course, among the most well-known. When there is an environmental scandal, it's common to see investors and consumers shying away from a company. And associated to that is the financial risk, where companies having exposure to highly polluting assets may find it difficult to find cheap financing. If we take the example of coal companies or energy companies having exposure to coal power plants, it's becoming very complicated for them to find the financing from banks. And if they have to borrow, they borrow with a high interest rate. And I think the last one that I will take as an example that is quite relevant for investors is regulatory risk. So as an example, the European Union recently adopted a regulation on deforestation-free products. And so companies selling products in the European Union linked to commodities such as beef, soy, palm oil will have to prove that their products are not linked to deforestation, legal or illegal, anywhere in the world. Otherwise, they do not have access to the market and face very high fines.
Now, you mentioned deforestation, and we've reported on your concern about a $1 billion unsecured bond issuance by Minerva Foods. What is the risk for investors, and how have you assessed it?
We looked at several factors. So first of all, the deal that Minerva has reached with Marfrig. So as a reminder, they are buying 16 slaughtering plants for other beef giant Marfrig. So the deal will increase Minerva's absolute deforestation footprint, considering the links to deforestation of these plants have been well established. And we see that banks, asset managers, asset owners, they are increasingly adopting policies to exclude companies exposed to high deforestation risk. So investor in Minerva's bond might see the value of the bonds and of the securities in general decreasing, because when you see companies, when you see investors excluding companies from their portfolio, generally it decreases the value of such investments.
Looking forward, sorry, go on.
Sorry, the second thing that we consider here is, as I mentioned previously, the European regulation on deforestation-free products. And we see a trend of regulatory regulations around deforestation around the world. The US and the UK are also considering such regulation. And we wonder how Minerva will be able to prove that their products are not linked to deforestation. So they will likely not be able to export to the European Union anymore, or if they do, they will face very hefty fines. And here I mentioned that a couple of the plants they have bought are being investigated for their links to illegal deforestation by the Center for Crime Analysis. So it's also giving investor exposure to such assets that are under potential litigation risk.
Looking forwards, due diligence is clearly imperative. What's the best way for investors to inform themselves of ecological risks?
So I will say follow us to start with. More seriously, I think there are several ways here. So there are a lot of media that are communicating on such risks. And I think that has become quite a mainstream theme that has been discussed by the financial industry. I think the regulations as well is something that investors should follow quite closely, taking into account the impact it can have on their investment. I would say following as well what various think tanks around the world are producing, because obviously they also can help investor understanding the depth of the ecological risk associated with their investment.
That was Stéphanie Mielnik from the Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute. More about this and our other headline news on our website, 8point9.com. That's all for now. We're back later this week. Thanks for watching.